Hello, I'm Audrey Kurth Cronin, Trustees Professor of Security and Technology and Founding Director of CMIST at Carnegie Mellon University. It's my honor to introduce General Laura Richardson and Lieutenant General Jim Richardson. General Laura Richardson is a four-star U.S. Army general who leads Southern Command, the combatant command that's headquartered near Miami, Florida. Southern Command is responsible for a huge geographical area, including Latin America south of Mexico, the waters adjacent to Central and South America, and the waters of the Caribbean Sea. General Laura Richardson grew up in North Glen, Colorado, and was an all-American swimmer. She earned her pilot's license at the age of 16. Now think of that. That's before she was even old enough to vote or drink. General Richardson graduated from Metropolitan State College in Denver and then was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Since then, General Richardson has had a very impressive career, commanding from the company level to the theater Army level. She's a helicopter pilot who, among other assignments, commanded an assault helicopter battalion in combat in Iraq. She has also been the Vice President's military aide at the White House, the Army Legislative Liaison to Congress at the U.S. Capitol, and an Army campaign planner at the Pentagon. Most important for us today, General Richardson is the first Army female to be a combatant commander. She's a pioneer and a trailblazer in the military. Lieutenant General Jim Richardson recently retired as the acting commanding general of Army Futures Command in Austin, Texas. General Jim Richardson grew up in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and graduated from the University of South Carolina, where he was also a successful athlete, playing football and surfing on his university breaks. He was raised in a multi-generational military family, his father having served in the U.S. Marine Corps and then also in the Army. General Jim Richardson had a very distinguished 39-year military career. He's a master Army aviator who specializes in Apache attack helicopters and has more than 4,000 flight hours. He had 7 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, including commanding an attack helicopter battalion in the 101st Airborne Division. His staff assignments included executive assistant to the commander of International Security Forces Afghanistan and executive officer to the Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army. Both Generals Richardson are inspiring role models for professional women and men in the military and also for senior leaders in every field. And they're also role models as a devoted married couple for the past 37 years, is that right? Wow. So during our conversation, I'd like to ask you about your experiences and about the wisdom you can impart to the rest of us on both of those dimensions, professional and personal. But let's start with some quick questions on the professional level. General Laura Richardson, you're responsible for operations, contingencies, and security cooperation in a huge part of the world. What's your greatest challenge at Southcom?
I would say at Southcom it is a big region. We have 31 countries in this area of responsibility, and so certainly being able to go to every country, develop relationships, and being able to do that with all 31 because they're all very important. They all are willing partners. And so being able to get around and see everybody and to build relationships, because those relationships matter. And if you've built that relationship with another country's leader in their military or their public security forces, when the challenges get tough, you can have those frank conversations, but you have to have gotten past the meet and greet part, right? You have to develop that trust. It's really, really important. And so I would say that, and then also having enough resources to be able to be effective, and a little goes a long way in this region. They don't need big things and a lot of capability, but they do need things at the speed of need, I should say. And you have to be relevant in terms of meeting their timeline.
And what would you say is your greatest accomplishment at Southcom? You're coming up on your 2-year anniversary, I think, of when you took command.
Right. And I would say that what we're doing matters and it makes a difference. And we're seeing that with the strategic competition that we have in the region that's going on with our strategic competitors and great power competition, which is alive and well across our globe, but it's also alive and well in this region. And so that's what I would say is that.
Wonderful. Lieutenant General Richardson, what are you most proud of in having set up Army Futures Command?
Wow. I've tried for the 2 years that we set up Army Futures Command to turn every challenge into an opportunity. And working with the people, it's all about the people, but probably the two things that I'm most excited about after retiring and looking back on it is that we were able to put 23 different weapon systems in the hands of soldiers in just 4 years. And that has never been done in the history of the United States Army. It was normally 17 to 20 years to do that. And so being able to streamline processes paid huge dividends. The other aspect that I'm very proud of is standing up the Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence at Carnegie Mellon. Personally took it on with just a few great people. And now as I come back to Carnegie Mellon and see how it's flourished, and our young captains and majors that have now received master's degrees from Carnegie Mellon and they're doing data science, data engineering, artificial intelligence, but more importantly, in just 4 short years, these young majors, captains in the United States Army are already putting technology in the hands of soldiers. And it's been very rewarding being able to be here and look back over the last year of the accomplishments of Army Futures Command.
Wonderful. So what would you say was the hardest thing?
The hardest thing is, anytime you stand up a complex organization, especially in the United States Army, there are current policies and procedures and the way we do things in the Army. And there's a bureaucracy in the Army, and there's a lot of process in the Army that you have to follow. It was challenging at times. I found out very quickly to overcome those processes and get the decision makers to make decisions. You only go to those people who can say yes. And there's only 10 people in the United States Army that can say yes, and that's those 10 4-star generals. And so having direct access to the generals, to the Secretary of the Army to make this organization work, that's what made it work. So we're trying to take a challenge and turn it into an opportunity, and I think we did a pretty good job at it.
That's wonderful. That's a great approach to life, I think. Take any challenge and turn it into an opportunity.
Right.
Well, I'd like us to pivot now because I'd like to talk to both of you about your marriage and about how you've had not only these fabulous careers and this huge impact in your professional lives, but also you have a wonderful relationship and a marriage that seems rock solid to me. It's very impressive. So let's go chronologically through a little bit about your personal story, if that's okay. And I'd like to start with, how did you meet? General Laura Richardson, how did you meet with Lieutenant General Jim Richardson?
Well, I met Jim at Fort Rucker, Alabama. And so I'd been selected when I was going through the ROTC program while in college. And I had put as my #1 choice to go to be an Army aviator. And so I commissioned into the Army and then went straight to Fort Rucker, Alabama to go to flight school. And that's where I met Jim. And so he was there I was a second lieutenant and he was already a captain a couple of years ahead of me. And so we dated for about 10 months. We got married about the year point, and we've been together ever since.
Wonderful. Anything you'd like to add, General Jim?
No, I'll stick to her story. No, I tell you, it was love at first sight. And that's the honest truth. You know it as soon as you see the person, you interact with the individual, And she and I had similar goals in life. She and I had, we came up kind of similar in life, and it was love at first sight. And so it was a great year at Fort Rucker, and it's been a great 37 years since.
That's wonderful. I come from a strong marriage too, and it was love at first sight for us too. Maybe that's a key part of the glue that keeps you together through the challenges as you go on. Well, was it clear from the beginning that you were destined to support each other's careers equally, General Laura Richardson?
And so I would say that's probably a question that young people don't think about so much. When you really like someone, you have the same similarities, you get along really well, and those kinds of things. It's not probably something that we thought about really, but we immediately started thinking about how you make it work with the next assignment, and because we weren't going to be at Fort Rucker forever, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, how do we get to just stay together? And throughout our career, we were pretty much able to do that. And the Army and the military has programs, the Army Married Couples Program, for example. And so we also kind of did the same thing. We're both helicopter pilots. And so as long as our helicopters were at the places that we wanted to go, we made sure that we weren't asking for something that would be something that my helicopter wasn't there at the next place. And we didn't ask for that place if both type aircraft weren't there. And so we, that takes just a little bit of research, and planning ahead. So we were able to do that and stay together. But it was important for us to stay together and keep our family together. And we were able to do that. And there were programs within the military that allowed us to do that, 30 years ago.
Anything to add?
Well, over in the Army together for 37, 38 years, there's give and take. And, we grew up as athletes, and it's all about team. And sometimes she gave for me in certain assignments. Sometimes I gave, depending on the situation. But in the end, it was about the team. It's about Team Richardson. And that's how you get through life, because one individual won't dominate. There's a lot of divorces in the military. And it's not about an individual, it's about the team, it's about the family. And I think the give and take as we went through our Army career, there are obviously good times and bad times. Our daughter probably had to suffer the most with us being gone to combat. But, Army brats are resilient. And I think it's paid huge dividends for my daughter in her life today. Growing up as an Army brat and being able to live with a dual couple military has made her stronger, more independent, and so very proud of her.
Your daughter's name is Lauren.
Yes.
And are you disappointed, or did you hope that she would go into the Army?
We let her make her choices, if she wanted to do that, and I think that she really didn't seriously think about that until it was time to, turn in her dependent ID card when she finished. She was able to keep it for medical and things like that while she was in college. But when it came time to turn that in, it was like, oh, maybe I should. I kind of like those benefits. And I said, well, you got to go out and get a job now. So, but we allowed her to make her own decisions. But I would also like to say, as Jim said, with the give and take, at the time we thought that maybe that we were giving and take, it was I'm going to have to give in and that kind of thing. It actually worked to our benefit, because I had different assignments that had I just stayed in the track and, not followed him to an assignment and did another type of job. Both him and I have different skill sets than others that are helicopter pilots in the Army. And I think that actually, as we got more senior, made us more competitive and made us more attractive, because we had other things that we had done in our career that actually worked to our benefit.
And not competitive against each other, but competitive against our peers. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about that question next, because I come from a two-career marriage. And started out years ago. And the hardest thing from the beginning was the competition that others projected onto us. So it was always a question of, is he the leading spouse and she's the following spouse, or is she the other way around? And to us, we were a team, but all the people around us were always trying to pressure us on that front. So how did the two of you deal with that? Do you want to start, General?
Well, you're right. Some people did try to pit us against each other. But that barrier we set up was unbreakable. I mean, they weren't able to get through because they didn't understand the relationship we had. I've heard it my entire career that I was competing with Laura. I never competed with Laura on anything. I tried to help her in everything she did. We did compete in physical training. I will admit that sometimes who could run the fastest or do the most push-ups. But beside that, we never competed. We did everything together trying to help each other. She learned from my mistakes. I learned from her mistakes. It was great. It was a team effort. But you're right. People, some of our peers tried to pit us against each other. And you just had to look past it. And, after a few years, they finally got it. It's persistence and determination. Isn't that what Clausewitz says is the sign of a genius?
Indeed, indeed. So you're both geniuses.
Yes.
Anything to add, General Laura?
I was just looking at your books on the shelf.
So, I think it was just because they hadn't seen a couple be able to both be successful. And so, the folks that would try to pit us against each other or try to be frank and just say, hey, at some point it's not going to work and one of you is going to have to get out or take a back seat, or it's just, you realize that, right? And I think we were both like, yeah.
We tried to push through it. And
Okay.
I'll bring up a perfect point, is when she was pregnant with Lauren. And I will tell you, back in the early 80s, it's not the military of today. And women, Laura had to be twice as good as me, right? She did. Women had to be, and she was twice better than me as it relates to that. But people come and say, one of you going to have to get out. You just had you had Lauren. Two of you can't raise a child in the military, and you're going to need to get out. And, we came to the conclusion, no, that, it's an Army family. And we're going to do this together. And people just continued to press us on that there's got to be,
But actually there were
one
programs, the child care within the military, being able to facilitate, our early schedules of going to PT, physical training in the morning and then being able to do field exercise. We were able to make it work.
Yeah.
And, we understood, okay, if we can't, then, one of us probably does need to get out. And
But you had to plan appropriately.
yeah, it was planning. And, when you think back 30 years ago, and those things that were there to be able to make you successful and be able to have a family and be able to get promoted and go to the next place and have the same sorts of services. I mean, that's pretty incredible to have that 30 years ago. And then even having that, it's even that much better today. So
do you think there's something about the Army, since it's a large organization, and it had these support programs that evolved and more came in place as over the course of your careers, if I'm not mistaken. So do you think there's something about the Army that made it possible for the two of you that might be harder for someone from a smaller service or even from a civilian company that's much smaller?
I think all of these type services, they're available in all of the military and all the services. So the Army isn't unique in that respect. And so that's why I think it's just a great opportunity, that we've been successful. We've been able to showcase that. There are, I don't want to say tons, but there are a lot of dual military couples in the military now. And, when you're in the same type of profession, you seem to get along, well. And but it's been an honor to be able to.
You just don't bring work home at night. Keep it there.
Good advice.
And I would say that, back to Lauren in terms of, with the family child care programs that are available, your child is plugging into another military family. And so she was never, I would just say that there are programs there to help her flourish too, right? And then when you're around a team and a network and a community of the military that takes care of each other, You know, it makes you very resilient, but she wouldn't trade one thing at all. I mean, she is so diverse and resilient and open and, you know, independent that, I mean, she really looks back positively on the experience
And
that
she
she
keeps in
had.
contact with all of her little friends when she was, you know, a dependent in the Army back in the 1st and the 2nd grade at MacArthur Elementary School.
In Fort
They
Leavenworth,
they
Kansas.
still keep in touch.
Yeah.
It's a close-knit community.
Well, I think at one point you were both deployed. Is that right, to Iraq, when you were both battalion commanders, if I'm not mistaken?
Right.
So can you walk us through how you thought through what to do with respect to Lauren?
Yeah, so absolutely. It was something that we always, you know, it wasn't just with, you know, with Operation Iraqi Freedom, right? It was when we were in Korea. It was, you know, every place we went, we always have to, you're required to have a plan if you're dual military or if you're a single parent, that if you get deployed, that you can be able to make that deployment, right? Because the military's counting on you too. You have that job to be able to fulfill that role. And so the plan was always for her to go live with my parents, and which she actually did. For a short time, she stayed with some friends there at Fort Campbell, finished her year in 8th grade, and then went to live with my folks. She went to my high school.
Oh.
And my brother had just, I'm 9 years older than my brother, so he had just graduated, actually, I think 5 years or so before Lauren actually started in. So she was just the next, you know, the next step after all of us kids had gone through high school, and really enjoyed it.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, what kind of advice would you give to young people who are starting out now? Looking back with all the wisdom that you've gathered over the years, what advice for military folks, but also civilians who are in two competitive careers? Not competitive, two highly professional careers. I don't want to use the wrong word there.
So I think for young people just starting out, I always give the advice, and not just for women, but men, you know, when you're starting out and trying to make your path in your profession, is to don't try to fit in, just you know, what you're there to do and your skill set, excuse me, do the best that you can to learn that skill set and part of that profession. So for a helicopter pilot, when you show up to a unit, obviously there are readiness levels that you have to achieve. It's your skill sets, it's your knowledge on the aircraft, learning the mission for that unit that you're in, and studying and figuring out how you can be a contributing member of the team. You know, not trying to fit in or push that or that kind of thing. Just keep your head down, learn about the organization, learn what you got to do, and you'll fit in as a result of that, because your teammates are depending on you to understand your role and your position on the team, right? Because it's all about, as Jim said earlier, all about the team and how good or how great the team is.
And never give up. Never, ever give up. It's worth it. You're going to go through some lows and you're going to go through some highs, but you got to do it together, and you just don't give up.
And there's so many times I would say that that you know, you're sitting somewhere and you're like, I just got to pinch myself because I can't believe I'm getting to do this or be here or be in this position. There are many times that both of us in our careers in the military, we would have never, ever believed that we would be doing what we were doing.
I mean, think about it. Her boss is the President of the United States, you know, and I mean, being here at Carnegie Mellon, never in a million years would I thought I would be able to be here and have a great discussion with you, work with you on CMIST. Never, if it hadn't been for the Army. The Army really broadens you, and it's a wonderful opportunity. You get to meet a lot of great people in and outside of the Army.
You know, at one of my universities earlier in my life, we had a program where we were to teach students how to fit in our university. There was a lot of worry about, are the students feeling that they fit in? And I was raised in a Navy family, and I just found that really hard to deal with, because my thought was, we're not trying to have our students learn to fit in, they're trying to learn to stand out.
Right.
But I think it's something about being raised in a military family. You know, that's the attitude. You'll become a member of the team as you become the best self that you can be.
That's right.
So are there any changes over the course of your career with respect to the Army and their supports? Any specific things that you would have wished you had when you first started out?
Well, I would say, as you reflect back, and I've talked about the things that we've talked about, I would just say, as we've come through as an Army and a military, and we represent society, and the changes that we've made over time in the Army, and now I'm in charge of a joint command, so I have all services underneath me as well. And to be able to represent the service members but see the progress that's been made, I think it's pretty incredible. Because we want to, you have to stay connected with Main Street USA. These are the people, these are America's sons and daughters that are in the military. And you want them, as you said before, to be be the best of themselves too. But when you think about, the pinch yourself moments, the incredible jobs that we have both had, and being able to fly helicopters and be able to work at our United States Capitol, be able to work at the White House, be able to work at the Pentagon, and then be able to go to combat and help another nation and achieve U.S. objectives, and it's just pretty incredible the things that you get to do. And I would just say that our military represents society and has stayed up with the times.
And the Army and the Navy and Air Force and Marine Corps as well, since coming in, it's really become more diverse. But because I see the opportunities for minorities in our Army today are much greater than when I came in. Like I said at the beginning, she had to be twice as good as me, right? To get the same evaluation, and that's just how it was. And, if I ran a 5-minute mile, 8-minute mile, she had to run a 4-minute mile. And she did, by the way. But
did you run a 4-minute mile?
No, she didn't. But she didn't run a 4-minute mile. But
I won that back.
She was always doing things probably
But
twice
he's pretty
as good
big,
as
so I always got to stay ahead of him.
Yeah.
I have to be faster.
But it was, and you and I have talked about this. I mean, she was unable to be in an attack. Women were not allowed to be in an attack helicopter battalion. In 1985. They weren't allowed in ships too. They weren't allowed in special operations units. Today, the United States Army has women who are airborne ranger company commanders, who are Apache pilots, who are armor officers, who are combatant commanders. Boy, have we come a long way.
We have. Just for the sake of our audience, can you explain what it means to be an Apache helicopter commander as opposed to any other kind of helicopter?
The Apache is the best attack helicopter in the world. I'll talk to you for about 20 minutes if you like. But no, it's an attack helicopter. We carry 30-millimeter cannon. We carry rockets and Hellfire missiles. My job is to protect the infantry. My job was to protect her when she was flying the Blackhawks with the infantry inside when we were doing the air assault into Baghdad. She was flying those infantry soldiers. I was on her wing protecting her. So, and once the infantry soldiers get on the ground, it's my job to stay over the top of them and make sure nothing happens. And so that's why, we're called an attack helicopter organization. We have 24 Apaches, the most sophisticated aircraft in the world. And it was an honor to fly that for over 30 years.
Okay. I think we've covered all of the key points, and it's just so inspirational. I think I'd be remiss, though, not to add one last thing. There is a problem with recruitment. The numbers of people coming into our services are not as high as they used to be, and it's often said that the Army recruits a soldier but keeps a family. How did they keep your family, but also projecting ahead, how can we reverse that trend? General Laura Richardson?
So I would say that just as the folks here, myself and Jim, talk about the opportunities, and really it's about opportunities, equal pay for equal work. All the jobs are open to men and women if you can meet the standard. What other position can you get up every day and make an impact to national security? Especially here, what's special about Carnegie Mellon and the relationship that the Department of Defense has had with CMU for decades, right? Because there's some synergy there. And that integration, the AI Integration Center for the Army, the AITC that's here at Carnegie Mellon, and bridging that gap with technology, I mean, that is just listening to those captains and majors brief me yesterday, it was just incredible how they're making that translating what the warfighter needs on the ground to keep us ahead of our adversaries, because there are people that want to replace the United States in the international world order, and they're doing everything that they can every day to replace the United States. And so we have really important things happening here at CMU, but where else can you do that than the United States military? And so when our job market is really good on the civilian side, our recruitment goes down in the military. That's just a historical fact. But again, being part of a team, you can't always be a part of your team and everything that you do and your jobs. And so, but in the military, you can. And where else can you make an impact? And then have the incredible jobs that we have both had over our period of time in service.
Anything to add?
No, I just say be all you can be.
Be all you can be. I've heard that before. Okay, well, I want to thank you both for the impact that you have both had and are having, and also for the wonderful role model you are as a successful team and a wonderfully warm and equally mutually devoted marriage. Both of those things are phenomenally inspiring to me, to all the people I'm sure who are watching, and I thank you very much for that. I'd also like to thank you for coming to Carnegie Mellon University here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I just want to say that we here at CMIST are incredibly honored to have you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you,
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.